Kubbra Sait, welcome to DeKoder and welcome to Between Us. Thank you for speaking to us today. What a fantastic cover, I have to say. It's lovely.
Thank you. Thank you. It's always a pleasure to see my book in a reader's hand, and it's even more cooler to see it in your hands. Thank you so much for having me.
So, you do answer the question, but a little later in the book, towards the end. But I do want to ask for all our viewers, right at the start, what made you write the book? Where did it come from?
It's really interesting that life gives you a bunch of reasons to go out there and discover yourselves, and it comes to you in strange ways. I remember being on this hunt looking for a ghostwriter for somebody I knew, and I was reaching out to various people, asking them if they knew of a ghostwriter. And that's when I ran into HarperCollins, and they were like, "Hey, would you want to write?" I was like, "Oh, what do you mean?" And they're like, "No, we've seen some of your autobiographical stories, and you've spoken at Spoken Fest before. Did you write those stories?" I said, "Yes, I did." "So, yeah, you just have to write about 30 more stories and you'll have a book." And I was like, "Wow." And I was like, "No, I think I am." So I was at this 30-year mark anyway. And I was like, "Come on, in 3 decades, you think I want to have 30 stories to pick on of my own life?" But I guess the interesting thing was asking myself those difficult questions, asking myself what were the big obstacles, the small, tiny little speed bumps along the way that made this journey possible. And when I look back and take stock of who I am today, I think I'm a pretty successful person. So I guess there's no formula, and I just wanted to crack that. I wanted to just see, what is it that makes me who I am? Because my mom always asked me this, never forget who you are, Kubra. So who am I was the question. And I guess I had to put those dots uh, as confusingly, as ambiguously as they could be on a blank sheet of paper, and then join all those dots together to say, okay, this is who I am, and this is what makes me who I am. And that's why Open Book is an unrestricted version of the incidents that took place in my life. And the idea was not to put anyone under the bus. The idea was not to idolize anyone either, but to just say that, hey, once you accept what's happened to you, life does get better.
Now that you say this, that life does get better, it kind of all comes together because if someone was to meet you, even in this interview, you're this happy, outgoing personality. And then when one reads the book, there is so much that has happened or you have had to overcome to, like you said, to be who you are. But sort of a lot of things in the book, and you write and talk a lot about what happened at school and the bullying you had to face. And I wanted to ask you to speak a little about that, and especially to students or kids who may be facing bullying, or even to parents on how to deal with it.
Bullying is such a personal thing, right? And the funny thing is, it's bullying when it's personal, and you just don't know how to deal with it. And I look around me today, and I see the way parents are raising their children today. And even children are raising children today. And there is a larger sense of empathy in today's school kids than maybe you and I faced in school. But I felt that when I was growing up, I ended up getting the shorter end of the stick. And I got it through my teachers. So I was bullied by my teachers, for being distracted, for being unattentive, for not knowing geography very well. And yeah, I think from just being the butt of all jokes, from having curly hair to a name like Kubbra, which very conveniently became Cobra, to the green eyes, where you shouldn't believe someone with green eyes. I think it kind of gets detrimental on a child because you didn't choose to be born with this, what today I call package. But when you're a child, this all just weighs extremely heavily on you, takes away from your social construct. I remember becoming extremely isolated. It happened to me at a time when my mom was personally going through a physical um, um, medical issue. Her femoral artery was blocked, and she was visiting AIMS at that point. And we were alone in Bangalore with our aunt at that point. So I guess I had no one to talk to. And every knock felt like a knockout because I was very young and I really had no one to talk to. And I guess when my mom came back, she went through like some of these magazines I had kept at home, and she went through them and she saw that I had striked them through and through with red ink.
Yeah.
And I had written redo, rewrite, unattentive, bad behavior, imposition, 0 and 100. So I guess like that sense of self-worth and self-esteem was pretty badly hurt and um and shattered.
But
So I guess I had
Kubra,
this opportunity to kind of build myself up again. But I guess having a place where you feel safe and heard can be a very, very interesting turning point for any child, like it was for me. Like my mom was
but
not ashamed to take me to a psychiatrist when I was young.
so, but tell me, you spoke about kids nowadays being a little more empathetic, and obviously, therapy is sort of now far more accepted. But do you think that, especially in India, the formal system of education, as we've seen it when we grew up, has that changed at all? Like you said, there are still teachers extremely conditioned to be traditionalists in a way that can just completely negate a child. So, do you think enough is being done there?
I would like to learn more about what the state and what the developments in our educational board are. And I'm not equipped to answer this question to say this is how far we've come. Because honestly, school itself was such a traumatic experience for me that I never wanted to go back to school again. And I remember having my teachers, say this over and again, over and over again. They would be like, oh, you guys, you students, nah, y'all don't appreciate your teachers. Y'all won't come back and see us. But I do remember going back to the teachers who did make a positive impact in my life. And I'm very grateful to those few teachers, far and in between, who helped me become the person that I am today. So I do know that a good teacher can be pivotal in changing the destiny of a child, can correct the entire course of their life. I don't think that today, if I were not held by a teacher like Ajit Uncle and Sadhna Auntie, I would have been able to overcome my fear of speaking to one person or being open about how I was experiencing that moment. So I feel like when a teacher believes in you, they actually help you go many, many miles ahead. And I think it was that initial boost that was given to me. And I was 13 years old. And to be able to rebuild myself with such a great foundation when I was 13 has helped me build and become the person that I am today. So I feel like there is no way around trauma. There's no way over it. There's no way under it. There's only one way through trauma, and that's through it. I was very fortunate that through my entire growing up phase, I had the opportunity to rebuild myself. And that for me is a privilege, which I don't take very lightly. And today I go to therapy on my own account. I take responsibility for my well being. But that's important to me because I do not want to be in a state of fragility ever again. And once a trauma happens to you, it doesn't mean that it won't happen to you again. But I guess trauma becomes a good way and an insight, if you care enough, to pick up the right tools and add them to your toolkit. Because trauma can like mask itself in different ways. So why not be better equipped to handle it instead of hoping it never happens to you, because it will happen to you in
And
some
it's
way
very
or the
interesting.
other.
Yeah, no, it's also, I was reading in your book where you said, how you go to therapy on your own and sort of you talk to your therapist, and how your therapist made you realize that in so many ways, it was you yourself that was standing in your own path to so many things that you could have achieved. And I thought that was very interesting because you, as you said, you sort of developed the tools uh, to move forward.
This is such an interesting observation. So, like, for me, writing the book was like a way to just like take the weight off my back. Like literally the backpack I was carrying with all that weight, I had to like just take it off. I got the opportunity to take that entire weight off, open the mouth of the bag, and just let whoever wants to come and take whatever they wanted from it. It was no longer my weight to carry, right? And it was so interesting because I haven't gone back and read the book in a while. But you actually pointed out something very interesting. You said that my therapist pointed out that the only person or the only problem that stood between my goals and me was myself. And this is an understanding that you constantly seem to have. So when you get out of your own way, the way does get easier. We're just so comfortable blaming everyone else around us and the society. It's just an easier way to not take accountability for what you could be doing. It's very easy to say, oh, the market is bad, the people are bad, the society is bad, the government is bad. And I get it, things are not as shapely and positive as one would expect. But my real question is, at the end of the day, who do you owe this life to? Is it to all the people that you are allowing to take the credit for misfortune? Or would you like to take the credit for your own fortune and for your own blessings? And it's a hard way there. But I think inner joy, cultivating that inner joy is just as difficult as taking out the weeds from your lawn. It's just as hard.
No, but
But
I think you've done
we end
an
up doing it
amazing
for like
job.
our neighbor.
No, but I think you've done an amazing job of actually sort of really probing and dissecting relationships. Uh, and I actually want to sort of go through each one because, you spoke of your father and you said, the older my relationship has marinated with my father, I've come to realize that he was a layered and complicated person. The thing is, even though he was there with us physically, my father was never really present. And then at the end of that chapter, you said, he's neither my champion nor my critic, but I am his daughter, and I always will be, no matter the years, the challenges, or the distance between us. And I wanted to ask, your father, apart from sort of, what you said was, his gambling habits, etc., but the physical aspect of it was, Kubbra, I mean, when I grew up, all of us, that was like the standard of the father in the 80s and the 90s. And, the father was sort of, this man who came, yelled, screamed, hit as well, and whatever. And have you now, in a sense, accepted, but is it with a sort of indifference to that relationship that yes, it exists, but it is what it is?
Oh, love can't exist with indifference. We've been taught time and again that the opposite of love is hate, but I honestly think it's indifference. And even in acting, the one thing that I'm taught is to go back and question myself, how much do I care for what I do? I mean, we can say words like, oh, I love acting, or I love my father, or I love my friend. But the question is, how much do you really care? And care brings about a different sort of empathy in you. With me, I think I was just done. And it was also funnily the hardest chapter for me to write, about my father and me. Because literally when I was sitting and writing it is when I had to go back, pick up the phone, and actually ask this guy who he was. And that was the only time I actually got to speak to him. But I know that I've carried like his curly hair, I've carried his green eyes for my entire existence. So he comes up in a way of me saying thank you every time someone compliments my eyes. How can I take that away from this guy? He's not the ideal parent. He's not what I expected in my life to hold my hand or to. Maybe I would have had better relationships with other men in my life if I had a different father who fathered me or parented me. But this is my journey, and I had to just figure it out with no matter what was handed to me. Instead of sitting there saying, oh, मेरे को game ही नहीं खेलना यार. Irrespective of what hand I was dealt, I still had to go ahead and play till the end, right? Um, it was easier to not like this person or have dislike, complaint, grudges against this person. But it was easier to do that because I was ignorant or indifferent to who he was as a person. But when I did make some effort, I understood that it's the best he could. And more importantly, it's so much work to put this burden of expectations that you have. And sometimes, as sad as it is your parents, right? So one of the things my therapist taught me to do was to write down the relationship at the header. All right, like for example, if I were my mom, I would, and then she would ask me to list down 20 things that I would do for me if I were my mom. And then she asked me to just go ahead and do it. What was stopping me?
No,
So,
it is no. I mean, it's actually uh, very revealing, of course, because you do sort of speak extremely candidly, but it is also sort of kind of showing all of us, do we think enough about our relationships in a way, or do we sort of, because whether it's your mother and how you kind of sort of speak to her, and when you tell her about something extremely traumatic that has happened in your life and her reaction to it, or you speak of Danish Sait, your brother, the famous stand-up comic, and that your sibling rivalry with him. And I thought it was very interesting because you're very, very open about, there is no sugarcoating any relationship.
I mean, we literally did have just the Holy Trinity. It was my brother, my mom, and I. We really were just the three people for each other. And valuing those people came in the way of actually helping each other out because we didn't know how to help each other after a point. And I think we were loving each other so much that I think now better said unknowingly because we didn't know better. We were also hurting each other. So I knew at that point I could not fill other people's cups if my own cup was empty. So it just became an endeavor for me to go out there and be like, yeah, cool. Let me figure this for me. And I trust me, like when I went into my therapist's office the first time, I literally was so convinced that my family was the one who had a problem and I was just being the role model that I'm glad that the sense of false pride took me into the therapist chair because that's when I started decoding myself, for the lack of a better word. And that's freed me, if anything else. And
No,
no,
we
I
love the
would like
word.
to say that I'm sorry. I just, I don't think I'm like some person who's like, who has all the money and who's like, resourceful in every nature. But I do understand that I care enough about figuring out what are the wires that are misconnected in my brain so that I can actually live a very, very happy life as I have intended to for the rest of my life. And that takes work. And the
And
proof is always in the work.
and I thought that was the biggest takeaway of the book, that we all have to own our own happiness, and that
Do,
you
man.
cannot depend on other people for it. But okay, I don't want to give the book away. I think people should go and read it because it is a very interesting, honest read. uh, and obviously, there is also the matter of time on social media, and my producers are now saying, come on, get on with it. So quick questions now. Sacred Games was a very, very brave choice. What is coming up next for you? The Sacred Games, this foundation. What's the next big thing we are going to see from Kubbra Sait?
Well, I have a project that I filmed, waiting for its release. I'll start shooting only next year. We have like Farzi, I think. That's like a big one for next year, hopefully. So I'm excited to shoot that as and when it pops up. I'm working on something of my own and personal, which should be an exciting ride. So I guess it's what is it called? Kubbra chapter. I don't know. 4 or
No, you
0,
also
4 or 4.0. We keep redeveloping ourselves, dude. Like, let me just keep doing new stuff.
But you also spoke about how you have Mini Mathur and Mandira Bedi as your role model. So is there a podcast, a talk show coming, something from you?
I'm working on a lot of things that can be run with like the empathy, the ideas, and the mind that I have. And I'm really, really like excited to not just grow with it, but actually just go with it, right? I've been sitting around going like, oh, my ideas cannot be shared just now if it does not have this production quality. So I guess those days of like, telling you some stories are over. I think 2026 is going to be a great year of sharing stories. I think stories build communities, and I would like to keep doing that in my own little way. Whether it was the beginning of telling stories and sharing your truth through the book, or whether it would be using a podcast as a platform or using humor as a platform. But I guess I'm not going to stop. I'm just going to keep going.
Using humor as a platform, you're going to give competition to Danish?
I think I'm my own competition. Let's say that. And that's true because, oh, well, like, see, honestly, like, think about it, okay? I have 5 years on my younger brother.
True, true. Okay, one line advice for a young kid watching this, a 13-year-old boy or girl being bullied in school, trying to be who they really want to be, not being understood by their parents. One line advice.
I know this sounds really philosophical, and maybe I'm not at that valid age to give you, such a big insight. But we spend so much of our time trying to be understood by other people that we don't lay enough emphasis and time on understanding ourselves. We don't spend enough time understanding what our triggers are. We don't understand how our reactions can impact the quality of emotions around us in our world. And it just gets easier to like accept you for who you are and difficult to accept other people for exactly who they are. So I feel like if we all took a minute, if we all took a few breaths for ourselves and asked ourselves who we are each day and tried to like fix that one oil leakage in us each day, I think we will be a full barrel soon. So that's my hope and wish to all parents, everyone who reads this book, that it's not over until it's over, but it's not over until you don't begin. So just begin.
So, on that wonderful note, thank you so much. And I just want to say, as someone who also has had curly hair for years and years and years and growing up, yes, here, for every time that we felt, and I know you say it, and so did I used to be extremely jealous of girls who had sort of straight hair. I'm actually going to call
Top
my
class.
producer.
Me
Cheshta,
too.
come here.
Yeah.
Cheshta, come here.
Top class.
So
I
I
know I
have to
hate
show
saying
you.
this, but
This
I
is
was
no, no, no.
jealous once upon a time
This
too.
is my wonderful producer, also with lovely curly hair.
What
Okay.
lovely hair you
Yes,
have.
absolutely. So we're curly haired girls, we're complete packages. And everything that we thought it makes us different is what makes us stand out. So more power to us, more power to you. And thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you so much for having me on Decoding. I really,
Thank
really
you.
appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And wow, thanks. This is really nice. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.